Okay, thank you for your patience. Um, Tonight's guest speaker is Ted Floyd. Ted is the editor of Birding Magazine, the award-winning flagship publication of the American Birding Association. He's written 5 bird books, including the Smithsonian Field Guide to the Birds of North America and How to Know the Birds. Ted is also the author of more than 200 popular articles, technical papers, and book chapters on birds and nature. He's especially interested in analyzing bird vocalizations, in interpreting birds and nature for children and beginners, and in applying new media and emerging technologies toward the appreciation of nature. A graduate of Princeton University, an AB, and Penn State University with a PhD, Ted has taught biology, math, and statistics to everyone from second graders to advanced graduate students. He and his family live in Lafayette, Colorado. Please join me in welcoming Ted Floyd. Okay, the moment of truth. Am I audible? I'm here. Pretty good. First of all, John, thank you very much, and thank you all for being out here. They told me about 25 people. It's 25 people, and a lot of Zoomers as well. So I'm really gratified by the turnout on this freezing cold night. It's so cold up there, we could just spend the whole night. Yeah. Before we get underway, I wanted to issue 2 special welcomes to all of you all this evening. The first is from the American Birding Association. It's been my lifeblood and life story for getting on toward half my life right now, much more than half my professional life. And the American Birding Association has brought some swag for you all. On that table back there, I see some of you all picked up magazines. And also, you don't want to forget about your Bird of the Year stickers. These can be like, pawned off on eBay for substantially more than they're worth. I think there's even some luggage tags back there. Hannah Floyd, who's directly behind me there, can assist you with procuring magazines if you need to pick them up and take them away with you. But we would love for all of those to go to you all. It's not to mine this evening. So please take magazines, and there are multiple versions of them. And by the way, that January birding cover is beautiful. Astonishing piece of sort of ecological art that I've ever seen. If you don't have this yet, you really want to grab this. It's an amazing piece of art. They're going to be talking about this in art museums like decades from now. You guys catch the spectrogram on there? That's cool. All right, cool. All right. Yes, sir. Oh, to this microphone. Excellent. Like right here? Okay, am I good? Is this a visual problem or an auditory problem? Auditory, aha. Okay, I'm in front of the eye in 2001. Brain scanning me right now. I had a second hello. I'm trying to remember what my second hello was all about. Oh, yeah. This is it. My special sort of second or welcome or hello or something. It's to the folks who are on Zoom. And John already mentioned earlier on, perhaps before everybody had zoomed in, that we're in this funny hybrid situation here. So, I'm in this, physical space with the gathered minions out here, but millions. And all the folks who are here with me in real life today. But I know that there are those of you all who are on Zoom as well. I don't have any way of plugging into the hive mind or something like that. I know you all are out there in Zoom land, but I can't see you, I can't feel you, I can't hear you. So I guess, and I'm sort of just carrying on what John said a moment here ago, be, of course, I'm not aggressive, but be involved. If you're on Zoom, shout out the questions, do a chat, something like that. And by the way, a chat, very good. Do a chat, because I'd love to engage the Zoom people as well as we go along here. So bear with me. It's awkward enough giving a talk to one audience, but 2 totally different audiences in completely different venues. I'll try to do mine. Anyhow, with that out of the way, let's get underway with this evening's presentation. John told me that I have 3 hours and 45 minutes tonight, and I'll try to keep my remarks under 3 hours, but I expect for us to be done before the clock strikes midnight. I'm just we'll try to move through things here pretty quickly this evening. In fact, I am going to go sort of quickly. And my style is that if you just want to sort of shout out a question or raise the hand, I'd actually shout out the question because I sometimes don't want to see the hands raised up. Just request clarity as we go along. That's totally fine with me. John, I think we also have time for questions and answers at the end if we're done by midnight. So that's my style. You all can ask questions as we go along. So it looks as if I'm going to be talking about stealth birds this evening. And thanks again to Audubon for bringing me along and encouraging me to talk about this. Is Jesse still? Jesse, there's Jesse. Jesse, this is Jesse's idea, by the way. I don't know if you remember this, Jesse, but we talked about some topics. You didn't call them stealth birds, but this is all Jesse's idea. So if you like this, it's all me. And if you don't like it, talk to Jesse about it afterwards. But we're going to be talking about stealth birds. But the real thing we're going to be talking about is discovering wonder and amazement in our parks, patches, and backyards. And we're going to do so by means of a question that I think every single one of us as a bird and nature lover ponders quite often, maybe every single day, practically every single hour in some of our cases. It's a question that even if we don't ponder it for whatever reason is inside ourselves, we get asked this question a lot. I've been asked this question several times in the past couple of weeks. I was at a Christmas bird count less than a week ago, and we had a reporter embedded in my group, and the reporter asked sort of the standard issue questions. What do scientists do with Christmas bird count data? What bird populations in the Denver metro region are increasing and decreasing? And I'm kind of like prepared for those questions. I know the answers to those questions. And then the question that, even though I've been getting it for 45 years, it always kind of catches me off guard, which is, why? Like, why did you people wake up in the middle of the night to go bird watching, and you're still here at noon, and you're going to be still doing this after dinner tonight? Like, why do you watch birds? All right. A couple of days after that, Christmas happened, and then it was the period between Christmas and New Year's. I was on the phone with another reporter. This one was with Colorado Public Radio. I should have known it was coming. The questions about, how to get started as a bird watcher, what books and apps to own, how to use your binocular, and why do people watch birds? I get this question so often, and I have to confess, I've been bird watching for almost 45 years now. I still don't really have a satisfactory answer to the question. That's the question that we're going to be exploring together this evening. So, why do we watch birds? I want to very quickly, I'm talking about like in a matter of a minute or two, acknowledge one major reason for which we engage birds. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about this evening. I want to at least acknowledge that this is a really, really important question and a very, very important answer. And this is an answer that to me it's really interesting, but it's not what I'm about this evening. It's an answer that is extrinsic to the birds themselves. It's not really about birds. It's sort of more about ourselves. So why do we watch birds? One answer, and I see like Lauren Benedict, Tom Schultz, and others in the audience here, is that we're scientists, and birds help to inform our understanding of the universe, the material universe all around us. Birds are model systems for understanding something like evolution or anatomy. It's a great reason, but it's not where I'm going this evening at all. How about the value of birds for conservation? Maybe what drives you is protecting habitats and the birds habitats and the organisms. Birds are such a marvelous way for understanding what's going on in the world around us. You know about the old canary in the coal mine, and that's truer than ever today. We know that birds, perhaps more than any other major group of organism, respond incredibly quickly to a changing climate. You do something to the earth, birds tend to track that change very, very quickly. So birds are really, really useful for conservation biology, but that's not the reason I'm going to talk about either. How about moving away from science and conservation to the realms of poetry, and music, and the visual arts? For as long as humans have been humans, birds have inspired our artistic impulses. Birds are really, really useful in a sort of commodity way for inspiring the arts. That's not what I want to talk about either. All right, one more sort of extrinsic reason that a whole bunch of us watch birds. It's one that really, really has attracted a lot more attention in just the past few years since the beginning of the pandemic, is that birds they're good for us. When we get outside and watch birds, whether we're by ourselves or with other people, this has demonstrable, proven benefits for our heads and our bodies and perhaps our spirits as well. I'm thinking in particular a friend of mine, Holly Merker. I heard her name bandied about here earlier today, who in an upcoming issue of Birding Magazine, published by the American Birding Association, has marshaled some really, really impressive evidence from the biomedical research sphere on how watching birds is really good for you. This is like not some hokey pokey, hocus pocus, pie in the sky, new age stuff that they do down there in Boulder. This is like legit, real science about how good birds are. But all of that is not what I'm going to be talking about this evening at all. I did want to acknowledge that those are some really good reasons for watching birds. No, what we're going to be talking about this evening are the intrinsic qualities about the birds. This isn't going to be about ourselves so much as it's going to be about the birds themselves. Like, what is it about birds that are so awesome? And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of our time this evening doing. But I'm also going to do this in two parts. The first part's going to go really, really, really fast. And then we're going to get into my comments for this evening. So I'm going to first look at what it is that makes birds so transparently, obviously, self-evidently awesome. Just, you look at a bird and it's just the most amazing thing. And John, here comes a moment of truth. I'm going to try to advance a slide. Goodness gracious, try this. Woo! All right, that's the bird up there. All right. Progress, folks. This actually works. We're looking here at a broad-tailed hummingbird, a beautiful broad-tailed hummingbird. It's red and green. This thing looks like it should go on the top of a Christmas tree or something like that. Speaking of Christmas trees, how do we really take down the Christmas tree in our living room? But we'll do that some other day. We'll wait. Birds like broad-tailed hummingbirds, which, by the way, are common, even locally abundant in Boulder County, and certainly up here in Larimer County as well, in foothills and mountains, are just whoppingly, obviously, blatantly, transparently beautiful. But in addition to the physical or visual beauty of birds, how about their sounds? This is, of course, a Western meadowlark belting its head off. I have heard in my life easily hundreds of thousands of individual songs of Western meadowlarks, and every single time it stops me in my track. If you do the math, if you stop in your track 100,000 times, means that I have lived a rather distracted life. In addition to the beautiful songs that birds sing, how about their incredible behaviors? This bird is, of course, an American dipper. You know, I've seen so many dippers. That's one of the blessings of living in Colorado. I have never had the experience of just walking away from a dipper. If a dipper stays with me for a minute, I'm there with a minute. With the dipper for a minute. If it's there for half an hour, I'm there for half an hour. If it's there for 3 hours, I get really cold watching the American dipper. Like I did this one here. There's just so much to say about the transparent awesomeness of the American dipper. I remember this photo. It was way up in the Wild Basin area of Rocky Mountain National Park on a brutally cold day in January. We just found a little bit of open water up there. The water temperature there is definitely below freezing. It's below 0 Celsius because, you know, it's the solutes in the water here in Colorado brings the water temperature down below freezing. This bird, which, anybody know how much a dipper weighs? Just curious. They weigh less than 2 grams. Oh, sorry, 2 ounces, 2 ounces, sorry. They weigh less than 2 ounces. They don't weigh less than 2 grams, less than 2 ounces. They're about like 70 grams. I mean, they're so incredibly tiny. If you ate like 10 dippers a day for your whole life, you would starve because it wouldn't be nearly enough food. Dippers are so small and they throw themselves into this icy cold water. They can see underwater. They walk underwater. They swim underwater. They find food underwater. They can swim upside down. They can go up and down, sort of like a Harrier jet or something like that. They come right back up. They eat it. They go right back down. They do it like for hours on end. They're incredibly round. This is a marvelous example of the maximizing of surface volume to surface area to volume ratio to keep your heat inside yourself as opposed to letting go out. And as you can tell, I could talk all night about dippers, but I'm not going to talk all night about dippers because in addition to the colors and the sound and the behaviors, there are the stirring migrations of birds as well. Maybe it's bird migration more than anything else that I think stirs and inspires us. This is a long-billed curlew that was flying low over the houses, flying due north in this past April in the Park Hill area of Denver. If Helen Butts is out there, I think it was like almost flying straight over your house, actually. But this is a long-billed curlew on its northward migration. And you see something like this, and this is a bigger bird, but the distances that these birds, in particular, these sandpipers traverse is just staggering and awe-inspiring and just so stirring the migrations. And finally, with birds like the prairie falcon, how about the majesty, the might, just the awesomeness of something like a prairie falcon barreling straight at you as this one is doing here. I know this image looks like it came from the steppes of Central Asia, and I'd love to be able to tell you that's the case. This was actually at a busy intersection on 287 near Denver a couple of winters ago. But isn't that what's so cool about birds? So that like something like this amazing prairie falcon was just flying straight across 287, not too far from Denver on a cool winter day, not all that long ago. Sorry, did I get it wrong? 287, US 287. I heard somebody mumble something. I'll say a lot of wrong things before our time's up this evening. Okay, so I think we can see a blank slide right now. And again, I'll mention this to all of you, especially consumers. Technology being what it is, I can't see my next slide, and that's a real crutch for a presenter. So I'll just sort of have to guess what comes next here. But that's the nature of the beast. And if I totally misanticipate the next image, so it goes. So what we're going to be doing now, let me put this down for a moment, is getting into the real part of my presentation. So then this is the real deal now. All that was just preamble. So we talked about these extrinsic reasons for which people watch birds, these intrinsic qualities of birds, their incredible colors, their incredible sounds, their incredible behaviors, their stirring migrations, just their power and majesty and might in the case of that prairie falcon. These things that to me, again, are obvious, they're overt, they're blatant, they're transparent, they're so obvious. And there are birds everywhere on Earth, more than any other group. And sorry, Tom, more than insects. Birds are more widely distributed on this planet than any other thing that don't need a microscope to see. There are birds everywhere. There are northern fulmars at the North Pole. There are also northern fulmars like way out in the ocean. Occasionally they get inland, but there are birds absolutely everywhere. And they're also so often, so, as I said, transparently, so blatantly, so self-evidently awesome. But I'm going to invert all of that now and talk about the kind of bird that is out there and just goes about its business, does its thing, and you could go a whole lifetime without ever knowing that they're out there. And I'm going to spare you all the philosophy and the metaphysics. I'm just going to let the birds speak for themselves here. I'm going to show you, I think I have 5 pictures here of birds that are all images from Boulder County, Colorado. They all occur up here in Larimer County as well. And I just want to share with you all 5 anecdotes that I think will get at where I go with all this. So here comes anecdote number 1. Actually, I was with Hannah not all that long ago, and we were up in the woods, and somebody noticed that we were taking a picture of a bird. I'll show you a picture of this bird. Get this gizmo right. A bird that looked like this. It's a pygmy nuthatch. And the person asked me this question. So, like, what is that bird? I said, oh, it's called a pygmy nuthatch. And the person said, really? I never heard of that bird. I had no idea that there were pygmy nuthatches up here. I've been coming up into these woods here for my whole life, and this person was my age or older. I've never seen or heard of pygmy nuthatch. I think to myself, you've actually heard as many pygmy nuthatches up here in your life as I've heard Western meadowlarks in my life. You cannot go into the pinewoods, which is where this happened, that sort of 6,000 to 9,000 foot belt front range, and not hear pygmy nuthatches that beep, 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 beep. I mean, they just go on and on and on and on. And yet I kind of get it. They're tiny. These birds are so small. They're way up in the tops of the ponderosa pines. They just kind of mind their business up there. They don't really come down low very often. They're just going pleep, pleep, pleep. And by the way, Lauren, I know that they sing, not antiphonally, they duet, which is a really, really cool result that Lauren and her students have figured out. They do so many amazing things. I didn't know, by the way, that they are a female duetting like that at all. But the average person with eyes and ears as good as yours or mine, heart and brain as good as yours and mine, world of experience as good as yours and mine, can go to the pinewoods for decades and hear this bird every single time they're there, have no idea that the pygmy nuthatch is up there. All right. Anecdote number 2 involves this bird. Now, this is obviously a hummingbird of some sort. Not fully clear yet what hummingbird this is. Now, a hummingbird, unlike a nuthatch, is a bird that attracts attention. If there's a hummingbird in your garden, you'll probably notice a hummingbird. And I want to tell a little story about this particular hummingbird, about this individual, this species. Involves a name probably known to some of you. I don't think he's here. I don't think I saw him on Zoom either. But long, long ago, 15, actually about 17 years ago, Bill Schmoker and I were down at Pellet Crossing in Boulder County talking about the fact that at the time, neither of us had ever seen in Boulder County a black-chinned hummingbird. At the time, we'd never seen a black-chinned hummingbird. We thought, oh, eventually we'll see a black-chinned hummingbird because they're starting to show up in Boulder County. We also talked about the fact that maybe they would actually start breeding in Boulder County before too long. But first, we had to see one. And I'm not lying. Bill were here, he would attest this. While we were having this conversation, I can't even remember if it was Bill or me, someone said, oh, look, there goes a black-chinned hummingbird. Like, oh, the county bird for both of us. About 30 seconds later, oh, we lost the bird. It went off into like a little grove or something. About 30 seconds later, it reappeared with a mouthful of cottonwood seed. But like, crap, it's nesting. Keep an eye on that bird. And it flew over to a tiny little nest, the crotch of a cottonwood. It was the first breeding record ever for Boulder County. So we went in a span of 60 seconds from never having seen a black-chinned hummingbird in Boulder County to having established, at the time, the first breeding record of black-chinned hummingbird for the county. It's a little wonderful little bit of sort of discovery for ourselves there. Black-chinned hummingbirds now are common in the eastern part of Boulder County where I live. So not up in the foothills, but actually out the plains, so to speak, getting out toward Weld County. They're certainly up here in Larimer as well. Greg, I know we used to see them up the Hereford Ranch back in our Wyoming days, and they're up by Casper. They're really, really moving northward quickly. The black-chinned hummingbird is a bird that was not here. Sorry, when I say here, I mean Boulder County, but also certainly not here in Larimer either. When I got here 22 years ago, it's all over the place now. It's a classic stealth bird. This is not a showy, aggressive, in-your-face hummingbird like our Salaspris hummingbirds, the broad-tailed, the calliope, the rufous, the ones that really are colorful and fight. A lot of them actually kind of look like this, rather beautiful, but shall we say subtly marked. This is definitely a hatchier bird, a hatchier female. Yeah, sure, it's a hatchier bird, and after that at all. Really, really cool that birds like black-chinned hummingbirds are out there. Again, clearly a hummingbird, but how many of us know really that this is a black-chinned hummingbird? Anecdote number 3 involves this bird and this story. All right. If you birdwatch a lot, especially if you do so at night, eventually you'll have an encounter like this one. I have to set that stage here first. Long ago, about 20 years ago now, when very young people were coming into my life, I had to sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with them and try to get them back to sleep. My daughter was relatively straightforward. All she wanted to do was be read to or sung to or play a game or something like that. I think some of you all know my son. He's probably on a bike in Alaska now or something like that right now. He's not that sort of person. He had to be taken outside in the middle of the night because that's his thing. He goes outside. It's inside, always outside. And we had yet another encounter with law enforcement. And this time I decided I'm just going to tell the truth. Officer, we're out here making recordings of and documenting the midsummer nocturnal migration of tripping sparrows on their way from the Colorado. Actually, I think we use the scientific name of it, Spizella americana. Where's Nick? It's Spizella, whatever. Making their way east from the Rockies, west out to as yet unknown molting grounds in Oklahoma. And the guy was like, y'all have to do it. Like, he didn't even want to deal with this. It was like me and a 7-month-old documenting the midsummer nocturnal migration of chipping sparrows. So let me tell y'all. This is a chipping sparrow. It's an incredibly straightforward or basic bird. It's easy to identify. We all know the chipping sparrow. But 20 years ago, we didn't know about this incredible secret that the chipping sparrows in Colorado were harboring. So what happens in around late June into early July in Colorado is that chipping sparrows disappear from the mountains. Nobody knew where they go. They just disappear. And then suddenly they would like kind of reappear on fall migration, like in September or October. But where were they in July and August? And I know some of you all know this story, but I imagine some of you all don't know the story either. What happens is that there's not enough food on the breeding grounds for them to raise a second brood the way that they do, for example, much of Eastern North America. So they have to leave. They have to get off the breeding grounds altogether and fly to places that are really safe for them to molt. Chipping sparrows have to molt in the summer as well. And they do this all at night. They fly from the Rocky Mountains where they've just finished raising their young. They fly by night straight east across the plains. And then some of them wind up in far eastern Colorado, but also like Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, Kansas, and Nebraska. And they complete a molt there that was not known about at all. And the only way that we can actually observe this is to go out in the middle of the night. Going out with 7-month-olds is fine, but you don't have to do that. And listen for their tiny little flight calls. You can actually hear this straight east vector of the birds going out of the mountains, going right over the Denver metro region, and then winding up somewhere out near Oklahoma or Kansas the next morning. Nobody knew anything about this. You go out at night, if you can still hear them, I can't hear them. You will hear them in tremendous abundance in the middle of the summer. So we know that birds fly north in the spring, south in the winter, but chipping sparrows have a third migration. They fly east in the middle of the summer from the mountains to the plains, which is just the coolest thing. I remember an experience years ago, after I sort of figured all this out. We were at Coors Field. Remember the Rockies? Rocky's still around out there. We were at a night game, and we could hear the chipping sparrows going over at night, right over Coors Field, and we got to see them in the lights. And that was just the coolest thing to be at a baseball game at about 10 p.m. or whenever it was at. It was at the end of the game, and hear the chipping sparrows flying over in the middle of the night. Who knew? The common, ordinary chipping sparrow performs this really stirring migration eastward in the middle of the summer to go to molting grounds that no one had known about. I think our next bird, and I saw Craig Beckman in the Zoom room, is one that will, oh, wrong button. Be appealing to Craig. Here we go. It's this bird. This is a red crossbill. Now, the anecdote I want to share here is a very hypothetical anecdote. This one didn't really happen, but this is a conversation between me and myself 35 years ago. So as I look at this red crossbill, I'm talking to myself 35 years ago in 1989. Is that right? 1989. My 1989 self would have been able to say, well, that's a red crossbill. It's obviously not an adult male. It's a female, a young female or a young male. Like that's all that I would have known about this bird in the year 1989. Except for Craig, because I saw Craig's name in the Zoom room, so I'm really nervous here. None of us, except Craig maybe, would have been able to say anything else but that about this bird. That's all we knew about this bird. Got crossbills, not a white-winged crossbill, has to be a red crossbill. That's my 1989 self. It's probably Craig's 1989 self. We know so much more now about these crossbills. Could this bird actually be a species that nobody had heard of in 1989? The Cassia crossbill. You can't really tell from this photo, can you? You could if you listened to these birds. Now we know because we heard this bird, we made recordings of it, that this is the crossbill called the type 2 red crossbill. Really, really big bill, and it's so-called flight calls. Very, very distinctive. We can recognize it just by listening to it, and can also recognize it spectrographically. You know the Zorro Z? You take the Zorro Z and just rotate it 90 degrees and put it on a computer output. That's exactly what this bird's vocalization looks like. To me, it's very pounding down sort of Q, 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 Q. If you hear that up in the pine woods, you're hearing a type 2 red crossbill. There are lots of types of red crossbills. There are type 5 here in Colorado, and type 4, type 3, and I don't know, they're like type 12 or something like that. There's another species of crossbill called the Cassia crossbill. I've lost track of what they're doing with the crossbills in Europe. There are so many more crossbills now than we knew about 35 years ago. We also are starting to learn about their fascinating ecology and anatomy as well. So the different crossbill types, because their bills are different sizes, are differentially suited to different foraging on different types of pine cones. So this is what we call ponderosa pine, type 2 red crossbill. It likes to feed on ponderosa pine cones, except over in Summit County, in Grand County, where there are no ponderosa pines. Then they eat another kind of pine cone. So they quite go with the story, but it's part of the truth of the red crossbill complex. We knew some other really, really amazing things about them. Even though their bills look about the same to us on the outside, they're very different on the inside. If you make an acrylic implant with like dentist materials of the inside of the crossbill's bill and compare it against the different crossbills, they're quite different. We have no chance of seeing that in the field, but we know that that's the case. Everything I've just shared with you is just brand new knowledge. We did not know this 35 years ago. I don't think Craig even knew this 35 years ago, and the rest of us definitely didn't know this 35 years ago. It's just a red crossbill, and there's so much to say about this amazing red crossbill. One more anecdote. But that does work. I think I'm going to use that gizmo instead. One more anecdote. Well, here's a goose. Here's a true story from just a few days ago. It's a little joke, a little game that I sort of play with myself and with some of the folks who come out on these beginning bird walks that I love to do the first Sunday of every month down in Lafayette. I think some of you all have been on those bird walks with me. I encourage anybody to come along here. But we invariably see geese like this, and the question arises, what's this bird? Of course, the hands all go, oh, Canada goose, that was easy. Or Canadian goose, Canadian honker, it's all the same, it's all fine. This is not a Canada goose. This is, in fact, a cackling goose. And along the lines of my crossbill comments, I want to again sort of maybe go back to not even 35 years ago, but just 15 years ago, and compare not just the state of our knowledge, but the state of the cackling goose in Colorado versus today. Real quickly, if you're wondering why this is a cackling goose, it's got that fairly stubby bill, the very steep forehead, the sort of thick, short neck. You can't tell this all in the image, but this is a small bird. as well. We know that this is the nominate Hutchinsii or Richardson's cackling goose, the most common cackling goose that we have in the Front Range metro region. But that's actually not the story I want to tell. This is the story I want to tell. 15 years ago, if we saw a cackling goose in the middle of the winter, we'd be like, oh, it's pretty cool. It's a cackling goose. In fact, I remember Nick might have been on that outing with me, actually. We did one of those Gullapalooza outings at Valmont Reservoir in the middle of the winter, and we saw one cackling goose. And we got kind of excited about it. Christian Nunes had just moved to Colorado. And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool, a cackling goose. What? I mean, you can go out and see tens of thousands of cackling geese in the Front Range metro region right now. They are everywhere. Now, memories are funny. You know, we kind of compare today with yesterday and yesterday with the day before yesterday. We kind of forget about what things were like a long, long time ago. 15 years wasn't all that long ago. There are so many more cackling geese now. And here's what's going on. It is a fascinating and deeply disturbing story. This is why there's so many more cackling geese. Until recently, cackling geese migrated from the high Arctic where they breed far south to southern New Mexico, West Texas, also northern Chihuahua, way down there. And there's not much food down there either. So overwinter mortality at cackling geese was extremely high until recently. A lot of them died on migration because they were flying so far. And then when they got to the wintering grounds, they died because there wasn't much food there. But there have been massive changes in agriculture the past 15 to 20 years in eastern Colorado, eastern Wyoming, Texas Panhandle, northeastern New Mexico, Kansas, and Nebraska. It's economically incredibly profitable, but it produces vast amounts of waste grain. And these geese have figured out these agricultural subsidies and are just going to town on them. They don't have to fly nearly as far as they used to, so they're not dying on migration because migration is really difficult, it tends to kill you. And instead, they're short stopping here in Colorado, like out in Lamar and other places like that, and eating tremendous quantities of grain and not dying. Overwinter mortality in the populations of cackling geese that winter here in Colorado used to be close to 90% in populations. It's less than 5% now. Their numbers are just staggeringly high. But that's weird. Here's the really wild part of the story. So then they go back up to the high Arctic. And these are not, you know, the names Canada and cackling geese are like mixed up because Canada geese breed in the United States and cackling geese breed in Canada. But anyway, so they're way up there in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and they're eating everything they can find. They're eating the grass on the tundra. Now, grass is all things considered a fairly light-colored reflective object. Sunlight hits grass in the Arctic, and it bounces the radiation back up to outer space. But the geese eat all the grass, and what that does is it darkens the tundra. It makes the tundra much more absorbent, and much, much more heat comes in. And remember 3 years ago when the Arctic caught on fire? It was considered to be the worst wildfire ever recorded anywhere on Earth. I know we get excited about wildfires in Colorado and California and the Pacific Northwest and so forth, and I wasn't up there, but from what I gathered, the extent of those Arctic wildfires, it's the Arctic. It's like way up in the Arctic Ocean. The Arctic was on fire, and it was caused in part, we believe, by cackling geese and also snow geese and some other birds that were up there, completely denuding the Arctic of all that light reflective vegetation, making the Arctic turn black with mud. Sunlight comes down, burns the peat, and once the peat starts burning, nothing stops it until it starts snowing again. It gets warmer and warmer, so we have this positive feedback loop down here with more and more geese coming back down here to eat grain, go back to the Arctic, eat everything, cause more fires. Well, that's a downer. Anyhow, we talk about how our little actions can have consequences. Next time that you, and for that matter, I, engage in dietary practices that are related to the production of waste grain in eastern Colorado, considering that you are causing the Arctic to catch. It's extraordinary. It really is an extraordinary story, if somewhat dystopian story. All right, we're going to shift gears now. Got to move along here to the second part of these remarks. One thing I'm a little worried about. One thing I want to deal with here, acknowledge, is the possibility that these remarks are coming from somebody, namely yours truly, who's been thinking about these things for a long, long time, who's been doing these things for a long, long time. And maybe this is sort of an unfair setup because I'm really addressing this from the perspective of somebody who honestly has been watching birds far longer than most people have on average, and who has also been blessed with a lot of education and experiences and knowledge about birds. But I want to disabuse you all of that idea now by contemplating the possibility, I think the very real reality that anybody can do this. And I'm going to do this on a personal note here by considering sort of who I was. I talked about this conversation 35 years ago, myself a long time ago, but even farther back in time, 40 to almost 45 years ago, and look at how these sorts of, I don't know, engagements and interactions with really, really common birds, I think are accessible to every single one of us, including me when I was younger than anybody in this room. All right. Exactly 1 year, 1 month ago, today's January 11th, right? On December 11th, I'm sorry for the quality of this image, but it's I saw this Carolina chickadee in Frick Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So this photo is from December 11th, 2023. And the reason I want to share with you all this Carolina chickadee is this is the bird that 40, almost more than 40 years ago, close to 45 years, 40 to 45 years ago, was a bird that excited me like none other. Here's the reason why. At that time, and you have to remember, I was a posturing teenager. I'm just a posturing man now, but at the time I was a posturing teenager. Everybody, quote unquote, knew that all the chickadees at the east end of Pittsburgh were black-capped chickadees. They had all turned into Carolina chickadees at some point in the past 10 years. I don't really mean they turned into Carolina chickadees, but Carolina chickadees were moving northward and apparently pushing black-capped chickadees out. And I and a couple of other, at the time, quite young bird watchers, some of them might know names like Malva Hill, Nathan and Eric Hall, Mark Vanderben, sort of simultaneously figured out that these weren't black-capped chickadees, they were Carolina chickadees. I also need to make a definite acknowledgement here of a older and wiser mentor, the late Ken Parks at the Carnegie Museum Natural History of Pittsburgh, knew about this before any of us also knew about it. But he encouraged us to go out there and document the fact that all of the black-capped chickadees were Carolina chickadees. And that was so exciting to me as just a kid to realize that we had it all wrong. Chickadees in Pittsburgh weren't black-capped chickadees, they were Carolina chickadees. And there were other birds like that, again, we're in the 1980s here now, that inspired me so much for their ability just to surprise and wow me. Like, for example, the Eastern screech owl. Greg, you might recognize that screech owl. This is not from, yeah, I think you laughed over. This is not from Pittsburgh. This is a screech owl, an Eastern screech owl that was at Wyoming Perfect Ranch for many, many years. But the Eastern screech owl was a bird that I could not believe existed in big parks in a big city back east, like owls in our city parks. How is that possible? And the wildest thing of all to me about screech owls was, they're tiny birds, you'll never see them, but they don't sound like owls at all. They don't go hoo, hoo, hoo. They whisper. That's what, oh, are we okay? Oh, I just died. Oh, wow. Epiphany or something like that. Exciting. Anyway, the screech owl, the Eastern screech owl was a bird that I just couldn't believe existed in city parks. And I don't even want to tell you all about how many nights I spent in the park, kind of with these pinch me, I'm dreaming moments. Oh my gosh, there are actually owls in our city parks. A couple more anecdotes from long, long ago. Believe it or not, this bird, common grackle. Now, this is a really, really, almost like, it's an exceptional bird. Here's something I realized as a kid, and I still really marvel at. The common grackle, I know they're common in Denver. They're really common in Pittsburgh. From sort of mid-March, well, really into October, they're there every single day. If you're a Pittsburgher or a Western Pennsylvanian or anybody out east, you will hear hundreds of thousands of common grackles during the course of a lifetime. You'll see hundreds or possibly thousands on many days. Common grackles are everywhere in Pittsburgh. And I think it would be very, very generous of me to say that even 1% of Pittsburghers know this. Any Pittsburgher with ordinary human hearing and eyesight, whether you're just commuting to work or barely looking outside the proverbial kitchen window, will see a common grackle. And by the way, they're beautiful birds. I mean, that's like a tropical beauty. It's not a tropical bird, but it's like, come on, that's a stunning bird up there. And I think it's really generous to say that in Pittsburgh, or for that matter in Denver in the 2020s, that even 1% of the people know that this bird, it's everywhere. This bird's in your yard, it's in your trees, it's in your garage. I'm joking about that. But this bird is everywhere. It's beautiful, and nobody knows that it's the common cackle. It's such a cool bird. Got one more of these. You know, there's this idea in the birding culture that I kind of subscribe to, but I'm sort of a little skeptical. This is the idea of a bird that gets you going. You sort of encounter this bird, and you know that you've been transformed, transfigured forever. You're going to be a bird watcher for the rest of your life. I can't really point to a spot, but this bird, the brown thrush, comes pretty close to it for me. I have vague memories of birds before my first encounters with brown thrushes way back in the summer of 1980s. It was like sixth grade now. And I saw this bird in a little patch of shrubbery in a place in Virginia where we were vacationing at the time, and was able to match it to a picture in a bird book back home and realized it was a bird called the brown thrasher. And I still remember the sound it made. I'm not talking about the song, but just this, they had this like kind of clucking sound. And I couldn't believe there was a bird called a brown thrasher. I went back home, and a lot of family were gathered with friends. Oh, I've seen it. I've seen the brown thrasher. We'll be okay. And then they didn't know what the brown thrasher was. That's really cool. It's toxic stone. That's all right. But to me, it was just so cool that there was this bird, the brown thrasher, and completely, beautifully obvious. And I learned it sings an incredible song. And it's a really obvious bird. And people didn't know about the brown thrasher. It's so wonderful that there are these beautiful birds out there that people don't even know about. Now, jerking us all over the place chronologically. We're going to stay geographically in the east, but I'm going to bring the events of last 10 minutes here, about 15 minutes, all the way up to the present time. I want to look at a bird walk that I did in Pittsburgh in my old stomping grounds just a month ago. 1 month ago, I happened to be in Pittsburgh, and I know some of these folks are in the audience here. So this is a picture of you all and me from just a month ago. And there's like this wonderful symmetry in this image here. There's three fine-looking fellows on the right over there are Mike, Mark, and Ted. We met each other as bird watchers in high school long, long ago. The three folks over there on the left are more recent acquaintances of mine. That's Frank, Maya, and Adrian. I've known parents there for 15 years. Maya's not quite that old. And then right in the middle, those are the two people I really, really want to talk about. So that's Ezra, and then there is Charlie. And I met them about 40 minutes earlier. So check this out. Mike, Mark, and Ted have known each other for 40 years. Adrian and Frank and Ted have known each other for 14 years. Charlie and Ezra in the middle have known each other for 40 minutes. And it was as if we had known each other for a lifetime. We were total like birding brothers. We could have been blood brothers. We still did things like that. We might as well have been friends for life. And I'm sorry, Charlie, but I remember, sorry, Charlie. It was really Ezra and I just talking about the sorts of things that he was noticing, the sorts of things he was discovering. Ezra, you put me onto something about chickadees that I actually did not know about. Offline a little bit later. I think Ezra's in the audience. He's not going to bring his attention here. But all of us, from Maya's age all the way up to me and Mike and Frank, me and Mike and Mark, were just all brought together on a cold, kind of creepy and dreary. Pittsburgh days are always like that. But a day of wonder and amazement and discovery. And it was just so wonderful to be out there with people I don't get to see very often at all. And just to share in this wonder and amazement about, we didn't see a single really, get this over here, not a single really rare bird the whole morning, but we really enjoyed so much time in wonder and sharing. We did though see one very, very special bird. Now, it's not a rare bird, but it's very, very special for me. And it was this. It's a common raven, of course. By the way, this photo is not from Pittsburgh, but it's the common raven. And this is a bird, and I'm jerking us way back into the 1980s now, that back in the 1980s was unspeakably rare. This bird was so rare that you didn't even want to mention seeing a common raven. I saw a common raven once in the 1980s, and I just rested because nobody would believe I'd seen a common. The common ravens are all over the city right now. They're all right now. They're also coming to be here right now. But the common raven for me is sort of so well exemplified in a photo like this. Again, like my Peregrine Falcon from earlier, this could well be, I'm joking, of course. This actually could be on the steppes of Central Asia because common ravens do occur on the steppes of Central Asia. But this is sort of the way that a raven is supposed to look But ravens never do what they're supposed to do. Raven that we found in Frick Park giving a vocalization that I've never heard before. And I've spent so much time with common ravens. I'll never forget this sound. It's on the phone. So, and it would just go. Apparently, I'm not really into this. Am I still working? There we go. Apparently, there's a song by the Doors. It ends with do 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 do. What is that again? Yeah, somebody. I don't know about Doors, but yeah, really cool common raven here. Common ravens are just, I can't call them my favorite bird, but they're almost my favorite bird because you learn so much. We have access to common ravens every single day in the Boulder area. I think you all know how much we really know ravens. I'm going to show you all an image now of a very classic raven. I'm embarrassed to say that this common raven is at the Walmart at the intersection of 287 and Baseline Road in Lafayette. I go there to take pictures of ravens because ravens, in addition to haunting the steppes of Central Asia, also hang out at Walmart. So this is a very typical raven here. I'm not going to after show of hands or put anybody in the spot here, but I mean, if I ask you a question like, how do you identify? Oh, come on. How do you identify a raven? What color is a raven? Now, there's a bird called a Chihuahua raven. White, right? But the common raven's all black, right? We're really loving it. Now, I know they're iridescent. Sometimes they have sheets. But here's the exact, I'm showing you the exact same common raven now, just a second later. Check this out. Let's look at his eye. Now, wait a minute. I know, does this bird have avian flu? No, I mean, actually, so one of the symptoms of avian flu is just kind of hangs to the eye. So this is a totally normal, healthy raven. So this is what's called the nictitating membrane, the nictitans at the eye. Birds like humans can wipe an eyelid up and down, but they also have another membrane called nictitans, or nictitating membrane that sort of goes left and right, back and forth like windshield wipers. And all birds have this nictitans. And I started noticing this when I began to take pictures digitally, and lots of corvids. And what I noticed was that crows, ravens, also the blackbirds, black-billed magpie, the nictitans was always blue. Let me show you another image here. First bird in mid-swipe. So isn't that cool? So they go left to right, not up and down the way that our islands do. I wondered if that blue was sort of just an artifact of the blueness of the sky. It's even on the grayest of days when there's no sunlight at all. No blue sky at all. There's just light up there. Their nictitans are still blue. So magpies, crows, ravens, common grackles, red-winged blackbirds, and some other birds have an entirely blue nictitans. It's not just some iridescent effect. It's actually a blue part of the bird. Now, I'm going to say something sort of extreme here. And I'm a little bit nervous because I know there's some ornithologists and other scientists in the audience here, but I don't really think this was known until very recently for several reasons. We can't see this. You cannot see this just watching a bird in the field. It happens too quickly. It might get so fast. Talk about a blink of an eye, blink of the nictitans goes a lot faster. When we look at birds in museums, of course, there's lots and lots of museums and lots of wonderful, incredibly educational studies. And when you take the eye out of the bird, right? That's the first things you do when you prepare a bird to get rid of the eye. So we don't preserve the bird's eye. It's nictitans here. And in general, in the type of photography that was done long ago, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't really want images like this at all. We wanted to pose and present because you film things like this. But now we're documenting because every one of us takes millions of digital photos. This colorful nictitans on birds like the common raven. I have not been able to find in the literature anything other than very sort of anecdotal, I wouldn't call it data, just sort of speculations about the color of the nictitans of corvids. We can go out and take pictures and see things like this, which to me is just so cool. All right, I have one last sort of array of images I wanted to show you all, and then we'll be done. So we moved the show all the way forward to today. I'm going to share with you all some images for today. Now, it was a cold and this morning cloudy, nasty, gnarly day. But I wanted to go bird watching, and I go bird watching every day. It's a personal discipline of mine. I actually do go bird watching every day. On days like this, though, like today, you know, maybe there aren't many exciting birds out there, but maybe they're incredibly exciting precisely because they aren't exciting. And by the way, I should acknowledge that Hannah Floyd was big for all of these birds and helped me find some of these. This is an American robin. Hello, Biggie, a robin. Come on, the robin's an incredible bird. It's up there with the raven. It's one of the most amazing birds. And by the way, today's January 11th. And how often do you hear from somebody, I think I saw a robin, but it was winter, so it couldn't be because the robins all fly to Texas for the winter. No, there actually are robins in Colorado. We have robins in like Alaska, Newfoundland, parts and Newfoundland during the winter months. There are robins everywhere. They're just such incredible birds. I don't have the time to give an entire talk on the robin, but I have actually given entire talks on the American robin. It is one of the greatest of all of our birds. We also found a bird called a spotted towhee. This is the female spotted towhee here. She was feeding on the ground by a feeder. I mean, it's a really beautiful bird. If you've never seen a bit of a towhee, kind of worth looking at. It's got that gentle satanic red eye there. Maybe it's gentle and satanic. But it's a really, really beautiful bird down there in the leaf there. The towhee, by the way, is a kind of sparrow. Speaking of sparrows, we found a bird like this white-crowned sparrow. Kind of obvious, this is a white-crowned sparrow. Crowns right there. Here's the cool thing about this white-crowned sparrow. We can tell where this white-crowned sparrow spent summer because of the absence of black in front of above the eye. So it's got gray and white in front of the eye there. So this is a field mark that's consistent with birds that breed in Alaska. Gambel's white-crowned sparrow. If you look at some of the really, really careful natural history literature from as recently as the 1960s from Colorado, Edwin Way Teal, famous nature writer, actually repeats this. There's this idea that the white-crowned sparrows that breed in the Rockies come down to the foothills during the summer, during the winter. That's completely erroneous. The birds that breed in the foothills actually get down mostly to Mexico. And the birds that we have in the winter here come from Alaska, where they bred during the summer months. And we can tell that this is an Alaskan breeding. I should also say Western Canadian breeding, white-crowned sparrow again, because it has gray or white in front of the eye there. Next time you're up in Rocky Mountain National Park in June, you can try this out yourselves. And you'll notice that the birds don't look like this one. Those are the ones that right now are in Mexico and will be coming back to our area in May and June. And these are the ones that will be going back to Alaska May. All right, white-crowned sparrow, but you're not going to believe it. I'm going to end this off with probably the most prosaic bird. What's the most ordinary bird I could possibly show you on a picture? Exactly. I got some skills in the audience here. This is a house sparrow right here. Now, this is an awesome bird. And this is a really cool photograph. This is from just a few hours ago here, but what you can notice this house sparrow here, and I don't know how well I'll show you the audience in the room here is a little overexposed, but you see black feathers seemingly coming in on the breast here. So this is a house sparrow. It's a male that is in the process of acquiring, I'm going to use a technical term here, it's breeding plumage aspect. That is to say the way it looks during the breeding season. Now, when we think of birds that get really brightly colored in the spring, birds like tanagers, grosbeaks, loons, gulls, they do so by means of a feather molt in late winter and early spring. So they grow in new feathers and they become the beautiful Western Tanager. Sparrows, all what they do is totally genius. Now, if you're a Western Tanager and you're growing in new feathers, or if you're a Lazuli bunny and you're growing in new feathers, it takes a lot of energy to do that. This is energy that can be used to raise young. It's energy that can be used to migrate. House sparrow doesn't have to do this at all. What it does is it actually molts only once a year, not twice a year, and it has all the brightly colored breeding plumage aspect of feathers underneath the surface, and they wear down during the course of. I've got people wondering, really, what I'm talking about, but this is actually how they do it. It saves an incredible amount of metabolic energy. And what we can see happening here is these feathers are beginning to appear underneath this external coat. Just during the course of ordinary feather wear, this will wear down, no energy, no effort, no expenditure for the bird at all. And all of a sudden it wakes up one fine day in spring looking like a beautiful breeding male house sparrow. That a house sparrow does something so incredibly ingenious like that. By the way, the European starling does the same thing, and longspurs and snow buntings do that as well. fairly uncommon a way of very efficiently, very energetically, economically bringing in bright feathers without like spending so much dying or symbolic energy. That's what this house sparrow is the process of doing. But I think that's cool. What could be drabber than a somewhat breeding plumage male house sparrow? A female, right? So here's a female house sparrow. This is actually the greatest bird I saw today. It's the greatest bird I'm going to be talking about all night long. We're almost done here. So this is a female house sparrow here, the plainest bird on Earth. It's not all that plain a bird. Kind of fun question. Tell this from a wintering female dick thistle. You don't have to answer that question right now. They're actually more similar to dick thistles than you might imagine. Yeah, this is a female house sparrow here. And doesn't she kind of look like she's sort of paying attention or listening? Right. So there's a male chirping next to her. Now, if you think a male getting the plumage through wear is cool, wait till you hear about what males do. So the male is chirping. Can anybody do it? Imitate a house sparrow chirp? Just come on, just do it. Come on, chirp, 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 chirp. Oh, right, over and over and over again. It's just this totally monotonous, steady chirp, 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 chirp. And all the field guides and all the reference works and all the scholarly works say the same thing. Like that word monotonous comes up over and over again. It's a monotonous chirp. It's the same chirp. It's just the same note repeated over and over again. Chirp, chirp, chirp. But that's not right. So a couple of years ago, a couple of us the spectrograms of the songs of house sparrows, and we noticed that they're incredibly complex, and we slowed them down by about 67%, by about 2/3. Remember, like back in the day, you take those old 33 records and played them at 78 or 78 down to 33. Remember, like I think if you took one of the Beatles albums and turned it upside down, like didn't Paul McCartney say, "Oh, you came like John"? So you can do the same thing with a house sparrow. If you slow down the song of a house sparrow, it goes like this. Remember in Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, when they slow down the whale noise and like it's really beautiful sounding? It's the same thing with the house sparrow. The house sparrow sings an incredibly beautiful song, but it's not our ears that are incapable of hearing it. Our brains are incapable of hearing it. The brain of the female house sparrow is simply superior to ours. It is able to, well, no, I mean, it really is. We cannot hear nearly as finely resolved differences in sound over very short periods of time as the female house sparrow can. An extraordinary example of this is a bird called the Henslow sparrow. The Henslow sparrow supposedly just goes, but actually goes, and we see that spectrographically. We know that it's doing that. We can't hear it because our brains aren't good enough to hear it. This house sparrow is enraptured, is listening to this beautiful song being sung by her mate. And I just think it's so cool that this bird is doing something that we know about. We can see it spectrographically, and not a one of us will ever hear it. I don't know, maybe after the singularity happens and we upload our brains and we better or something like that. But as long as we're corporeal humans, we can't do that. All right, I have two final slides for you all. And after you went home, I'm sorry, but the sky is clear. And I did see two bald eagles up on a post there. Yeah, I know, we finally have a kind of back to the beginning here. That's sort of the whole point here. Folks, it's okay to look at a pair of bald eagles right up on a tree by Wanaka Lake in Lafayette. And birds like this are just amazing. I don't have to tell you any story about this bald eagle. I don't have to tell you anything about its behavior, anything about its molt, anything about its cryptic or secret or hidden lifestyle or song. It's just an amazing bird to look at, and bald eagles right overhead in Lafayette. The final image for you, and I'm going to, so this final image here is to sort of bring the whole human dimension back into all of this. I want to set the stage for you for this image before I actually share it with you all. So we're going to go back to the month of October. Something that happens up here in Fort Collins and also down in Boulder. And by the way, you guys get it about an hour before us. What happens in Fort Collins an hour before it happens in maybe an hour and a half before it happens? Yeah, somebody says Sand Hill Crane. This is an amen event of the, and this is my son says. This is something that happens every single year in October. And, we live in trying times. You may have read the news and heard that there's some problems out whole society. When the sandhill cranes go over the Front Range metro region, right down the I-25 corridor, like all of humanity tonight, people come outside like the cranes are going over, the cranes are going over. Like, we're all brought together by the spectacle of these cranes. And these cranes are the amazing cranes. I want to be really careful. I might have some folks and friends out in the west slope of Colorado, and those are great cranes out there. The one that come to the Carpenter Ranch and Steamboat Springs and then go down toward Alamosa and head down to New Mexico. Those are really cool cranes. I absolutely commend to you the events that are out there in Western Colorado, especially the Crane Festival. But these are the cranes that just, they get me every single time. Some of these sandhill cranes breed literally thousands of miles west of the Bering Strait, so far east that they're way out in the Eastern Hemisphere. They come all the way across, they come way across Alaska, all the way down the east side of the Canadian Rockies. By the time they're in Colorado, they are on final approach to their wintering grounds, and they don't mess with us at all. They're just up there over I-25. And if you didn't notice, they never land. I mean, a few of them land, but they are just going. And we love these cranes like we love nothing else on earth. It brings all of us together. Everything that's amazing about birds are so obvious, and they're so blatant, and they're so just self-evidently beautiful. We love cranes, especially cranes and moons and other things like that. But the story of the cranes, the fact that they've come all the way from central Russia and are on their way to their final stopping grounds, just south of Colorado, actually, it's something that just, after all these years, still makes my spine shiver. It's an incredible story. So that's the note that I'm going to end on right here. But I'm also going to send you all out with like a feature or something, like a charge or a benediction or something. So we're in the know. We know how cool, how awesome, how self-evidently wonderful birds are, but lots of people actually don't. And I hope I didn't come across as sort of snitty or snotty about the people who don't know what a common grackle is, or who wouldn't recognize an eastern screech owl that went to the garage or something. We have that knowledge. We've been struck, we've been touched, we've been affected for some reason by our love for birds. And birds like these cranes are like, they're really good for us. And I know all, and all of you are out there, I know how good birds are for us individually. I think they're really, really good for us as a community, as a society as well. If everybody in the world is passionately as all of us in this room, and hello Zoomers, as all of you all on Zoom are as well, I don't think there are any problems in the world at all, because we'd all be so into birds that like we wouldn't have any time to fight with ourselves. So you all have been bitten by the birding bug. For whatever reason, you've been touched. However, I don't want to go all spiritual on you all here, but like birds have affected your lives in an incredibly positive way. And I exhort all of you all to get out there and share with the whole rest of the world wonder and majesty and transparent awesomeness, but also secret and stealthful, wonderful ways of birds. Thank you all very much. Good night.
We can afford maybe 10 minutes for questions.
And I want to make sure that the Zoomers get in on this as well. So, John, do you manage that? Or? Great. So, but I do want to say to the Zoomers out there, if you have a question, do me a favor, or do John a favor too. Say who you are and where you're from. That's always of some interest to me. But we have a question in the room first. So, yes, what is your question?
I'm sure.
Didn't get a chance to talk about bush tits at all. So there's a picture of a bush tit there. That is very true. I don't have anything to say about bush tits. Well, except I do. The bush tit's my favorite bird. I can literally give a talk on. In fact, I've given a 90-minute talk on a bush tit. Nobody wants to leave at the end. That's how riveting bush tits are. The bush tit's the greatest bird in the world. It does so many incredibly stealthful things that we're still learning about. I just didn't have time to put bush tit in the talk. But thank you for mentioning the bush tit. My favorite bird. It's the greatest bird. You'll have to bring me up here later. Okay. All right. Anybody else, either in the room or on Zoom? Yeah, sorry, I know this is very technical.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, good question. Okay, no questions from the Zoom folks. Sorry, I covered everything. Looks like I'll get home before midnight. Oh, no, there's a question. All right. So believe it or not much of a camera at all. It's the I'm sorry. Thank you, Nick. The question was, what kind of a camera do I use? So most of these images were taken with just a little Canon FX70. It's small enough that you could, the size of a dipper, it weighs a little bit more than a dipper, but the size of a dipper. Today's digital cameras are just amazing. The SX70, which unfortunately isn't sold anymore, is just a few $100s. Nikon has a really nice camera now called the 95. Nick? Say it again? All right, thanks. The P950. And Nick, you were an inspiration without your knowing it to me to get that camera a few months ago. So yeah, it's just a little digital camera. I want to say something about cameras real quickly here. Thanks for bringing that up. So people always say, what kind of camera do you use? And my friend Bill Schroeder, whom I mentioned a little earlier, said, well, that's a little bit like saying to David Sibley, oh, those are great paintings. What kind of paintbrush do you use? So folks, it's not the camera. It's the person. It really is. The equipment matters to some extent. But if you gave David Sibley a crayon, he would still draw a better bird than any of the rest of you all would. I mean, he actually would. It's about trying canvas Chinese musician. Just wait for the bird to come to you. Like, I know that's so incredibly basic advice, but that's really, really good. Sit with the bird, know about the bird before you go out. Understand a little bit about the habits, and not only the species of the particular bird as well. So the answer to your question is just a little throwaway digital camera that I've dropped too many times. And by the way, if you want to get a really beautiful image, you can get perfectly serviceable images of birds in this day and age with remarkably.
Two quick questions.
Okay, and let me know who you're from.
Jay Gross, what bird species use the house sparrow's low energy mold strategy?
Yeah, I think that. So by the way, and I may gloss over this real quickly. So some do. Starling does. I mentioned that the growth of the buntings and the longspurs. I don't. It seems like an ingenious thing that a lot of birds should do. That's a good question for grad students.
Next one. Tina had sent a photo taken last week of sandhill cranes in Delta County.
Oh, right, yes.
Weren't they supposed to be somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great. Sorry, who asked that question? That's a really interesting matter. So there's going to be another one that's like 15 to 20 years. If you've been in Delta in Western Colorado 20 to 25 years ago, the dead of winter, there would have been no sandhill cranes there now. Sandhill cranes are doing the cackling goose thing now. They're short stopping in Delta, and there's a flock that's getting bigger and bigger there every winter, just as our climate gets warmer and drier, and also there's a lot of agriculture up there. That's probably going to happen in the San Luis Valley, in our lifetime, and maybe even sooner. The birds are getting back earlier and earlier in the spring. The first arrivals now are in January, and the last returns are in December. I mean, there's not much space between December and January. So that's a recent phenomenon, and it reflects changing land use. It reflects the warming, drying of the climate, and also the increased population of cranes. Cranes used to be persecuted. Nobody persecutes cranes. Since that came up, I just want to mention something about cranes. It's pretty cool. So cranes cannot be hunted in Colorado, or at least that was the case at so. And there was a proposal to open up hunting cranes in Colorado, I think like 10 or 15 years ago. And do you know who did it? It's kind of interesting. The people who hunted cranes, there weren't people who. And nobody wants to have people who kill cranes. The hunting of sandhill cranes in Colorado is killed by anybody else out there. Oh, and my microphone's died. This must, or maybe he turned off the microphone. That's good. But anyhow, the microphone is dead. I'll take that as a signal from on high to stop talking. And again, thank you all and good night. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tim. That was magnificent. Before you run out, just a note about next month's program. Our speaker next month will be Arvind Punjabi, Senior Research Scientist at Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. Arvind will be speaking on the topic of 3 billion birds lost and counting. Can we stop the decline and bring them back? So I hope you'll join us for our February program on the second Thursday. Thank you, Ted.